Welcome back to War Manual. For millennia, the ultimate goal of a siege was not to break down walls with catapults, but to empty the enemy's granaries. Hunger has always been humanity's oldest and most effective siege weapon. Today, the walls are national borders, and the granaries are global, and the siege is happening on a scale our ancestors could never have imagined. Picture a supermarket aisle. The constant hum of the refrigerators, the perfect lighting. It seems like a sanctuary of peace and abundance. But this peace is an illusion. It is a dangerously fragile peace. Now, picture a lone drone, thousands of kilometers away, diving towards a cargo ship in the Red Sea. To most people, these two images belong to different worlds. In this video we will prove that they are not only connected, but are part of the same war. A silent war, fought not with armies, but with sanctions, naval blockades, and commodity manipulation. We will deconstruct how modern conflicts, especially an escalation between powers like the USA and Iran, transform food into the ultimate weapon. This is the story of how your shopping cart became a battlefield, and the war for it has already begun. The chokepoints, the vulnerable arteries of the planet. Our global food system is a logistical miracle, a fine-tuned machine that moves unimaginable quantities of food across oceans. But like any complex machine, it has critical points of failure. In global trade, these points are the narrow maritime passages, the choke points. They are the arteries of the planet, and they are more vulnerable than ever. The Suez Canal and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which connects it to the Red Sea, are a perfect example. We have recently seen how attacks by Houthi rebels, supported by Iran, turned this maritime soup into a shooting gallery. Suddenly, shipping giants like Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd were forced into a drastic decision to divert their fleets. Instead of a quick passage through the Suez, their ships now have to circumnavigate the entire continent of Africa via the Cape of Good Hope. This adds, on average, 10 to 15 days of travel time, burns millions of dollars in extra fuel, and dramatically increases war risk insurance premiums. The result? A cascading delay and a built-in cost on every single container that arrives in the ports of Europe and America in the Black Sea. The war in Ukraine gave us a brutal lesson on this same vulnerability. Ukraine, one of the world's largest breadbaskets, saw its ports, like Odessa, blockaded and its grain infrastructure bombed. The grain deal, mediated by the UN, was an attempt to keep this artery open, but its suspension by Russia demonstrated how food can be used as a powerful geopolitical bargaining chip. And of course, there is the Strait of Hormuz. While famous for oil, any conflict that closes it would paralyze traffic in both directions, affecting not just the energy that moves the world, but also the flow of manufactured goods and food. A single incident in any one of these choke points doesn't just cause a logistical headache, it triggers a heart attack in global trade. The source attacking. The world's BRAWH, the second front in this silent war, is fought on the land itself. The food system relies on a dangerous principle, hyperspecialization. A handful of nations, US, Brazil, Argentina, Canada, Russia, Ukraine produce the vast majority of the essential grains and agricultural commodities that feed the rest of the world. This efficiency creates a systemic vulnerability. A problem in one of these becomes a problem for everyone. But the most elegant and invisible weapon on this front is the fertilizer crisis. Modern high-yield agriculture depends on three key nutrients: nitrogen N, phosphorus P, and potassium K. The production of nitrogen-based fertilizers is an industrial process that is heavily dependent on natural gas. Russia is a superpower in both natural gas and fertilizers. Along with its ally Belarus, it also dominates the production of potassium. Now connect the dots. A conflict leads to sanctions against Russia. The gas supply to Europe is cut. The price of gas explodes. Fertilizer plants in Europe, which have become economically unviable, shut down. The global supply of fertilizer plummets and prices triple. Suddenly, a farmer in Peru, Kenya, or Southeast Asia cannot afford the necessary inputs for their crop. Their yields fall. Local food production declines. The result is hunger and social unrest. We have seen the historical precedent for this. Many analysts link the wave of protests during the Arab Spring in 2010-2011 to a spike in global food prices, which made bread unaffordable for millions. The weapon was not a bomb, it was the price of wheat. The perfect weapon, the strategy of deliberate starvation. This brings us to the dark heart of modern warfare, the point that should create the greatest urgency, the disruption of food. Supply is not just an unfortunate side effect. Increasingly, It is the primary strategy. It is the instrumentalization of hunger. It is the transformation of agriculture into weaponry. When an army blockades a city or region, preventing humanitarian aid from entering, as we've seen in places like Tigray in Ethiopia or in Yemen, it is using humanity's oldest siege tactic to break the enemy's will when it systematically destroys agricultural infrastructure and grain silos. As we've seen in Ukraine, the goal is to destroy the adversary's ability to sustain itself long-term, rendering it dependent and weak. Another powerful tactic is the use of export bans. In a moment of global panic, a major producing country might ban the export of a staple food, like rice or wheat, to protect its own population and control domestic prices. The immediate effect is a wave of panic buying in the countries that depend on that import, who then rush to buy from other sources, driving global prices even higher and punishing the poorest, most vulnerable nations. It is food nationalism used as a blunt weapon on the world stage. We are witnessing a medieval siege applied on a planetary scale, where control over ports, shipping routes, and fertilizer production is as decisive as control over a battlefield. It's a war unseen on the nightly news, but whose effects are felt in the stomachs of millions. The greatest illusion of the 21st century is that our complex, globalized world is resilient. In reality, it is a delicate, finely tuned machine, where every part depends on the other. The distance between political stability in the Middle East and the availability of food in your city is dangerously short. The supermarket has become a map of global vulnerabilities. The price of gas tells the story of the Strait of Hormuz. The price of bread tells the story of the fields of Ukraine and the fertilizer plants of Russia. The empty shelf where an imported product should be tells the story of a ship rerouted. In the Red Sea, the real threat of an escalating war between major powers is not just the direct military confrontation, it is the potential for a cascading systemic collapse of the systems on which we all depend. Understanding how the global food system can be weaponized is the first step toward demanding more resilient, secure, and local systems of production. A nation's true security lies not only in its military might, but in its sovereign ability to feed its people. The first step in building a defense is to map the threat. What signs of this fragility have you already observed in your own country's supply chain? Share your intel in the comments. If this analysis has opened your eyes to the true risks of modern war, leave a like and subscribe to War Manual so you are not caught by surprise. Knowledge is your first and most powerful shield.